Hello, and today we'll be playing Nerus. So we completed the prologue, so we're going to start chapter 1. And as you can see here, it's a totally different setup from the prologue, where we spent the time in a dark mansion. So here we are on this island. Got the ocean and it's bright and sunny. Now this is a totally different setting from the prologue. So we're going to start a new chapter. Chapter 1, All the Seas. Picking up where we left off, Ida and Lisa, a detective duo, are hired to investigate potential murder that took place in Smith Abbey. As it often happens around detectives, there's more to the case than meets the eye. A classical, if a bit odd mystery, new pieces might have sewn up during your absence, but rest assured the old ones are where you left off. Difficult to meet them. A moderate challenge for those acquainted with mysteries. Distant waves were crashing against the shore. Elisa frowned and clung her pillow as if that would make the sound disappear. Soon she started feeling the urge to use the bathroom, let out a defeated sigh, and opened her eyes. It was seen she had left the window open. Plenty of light and salty wind was entering through it. She dragged herself out of bed and closed both the window and the curtains. Can't say I'm a fan of sea cities. The sound of the waves can be nice, but the smell is terrible. In the end, I didn't find Dad here either. This is disappointing. If I keep searching, it will have to wait until after the gig Bidey got us. I will need some more money after this trip anyway. She packed her things up and a few minutes later exited the dormitory and went downstairs, carrying her backpack. Hey, I will be leaving now. Consider my room free for rent. Oh, alright, lady. Leaving the city already? Yes, my ship is scheduled to sail today. My work partner got us a new job. I better go back or I won't hear the end of it. Hope you visit us again someday. Good luck on your travels. Yes, farewell. She walked out to the exit and pushed the door open. The temperate sea wind enveloped her as she stepped outside. Her long pale hair fluttered in the breeze as she wrinkled her nose. Fuck, I hate the smell. No wonder Dad already moved out. I bet he can't stand it either. She threw her hair back and approached the canal to inspect her reflection. She spent a minute frowning and grimacing at the water, sometimes showing her pointy teeth. Satisfied, she nodded and fixed her tie. Better get moving. The ship is going to set sail in about an hour. Elisa whistled at the incoming rolling boat. She paid the rower for a trip to the port. She stared at her rather intently on their way there, but she did not pay it any mind. The ride was silent, even a bit relaxing thanks to the sounds of water flowing through the city canals. Around half an hour later, they arrived at a large port at the edge of the city. The place was crowded with people, be it local merchants, heroes, and wealthy, tourists or seamen either transporting cargo or attempting to impress some of the tourists. Lisa picked up her backpack and got off the boat, then walked toward one of the large flagships. A rather scrawny man with green glasses and a notebook in hand stopped her on the main deck. After confirming that she was a passenger, he warmly welcomed her aboard. The woman nodded and headed straight to the passenger cabins. A sigh escaped her lips as she closed the door. It would take nearly a week to arrive at her destination, but at least it would be a shorter journey than a direct trip back home. She was still annoyed Bitey had informed her about a new job so suddenly. It was fortunate she had been able to change trips. However, that wasn't typical of him. Their client must have summoned them pretty urgently and offered a very hefty payment. Or maybe he had found the case interesting enough to justify this. In the letter Alicia had received a couple of days ago, Bitey mentioned they had been hired by the cellarer of the main church of Smith in order to investigate a recent death that had been ruled out by the police as an accident. According to the client, there was much more to it than that, but the police had refused to look into it any further. Barton explained that the victim's quarters had caught on fire. The rest of the building followed shortly after. There was massive material losses, although no further victims were discovered. And the victim, none other than the Abbey's abbot himself. While they didn't have much information yet, Elisa already found the scenario too contrived to immediately rule it an accident. Guided by the sound of the sea, she looked out through the window at the endless blue. The strangest detail so far was the police's refusal to investigate. An abbot being murdered or even suffering an accident of this kind was unprecedented, let alone in their own abbey. It was shortly after the end of the second millennium that Earth underwent a drastic transformation. Chunks of the continents known back then as Europe, Asia, and Africa vanished. Despite this, the water levels rose and flooded sizable parts of the remaining land. Electronic devices all around the world broke down, crippling humanity's capacity to communicate, treat those in poor health, and even transport goods. It all left humanity in a dire position. The old society collapsed as billions died during the flood from starvation or during the chaos that ensued. Although the very peculiar testimonies from this period have survived to this day, the precise cause of this cataclysm was still unknown. Well, of course, these were old stories Elisa had only heard of. 1,000 years had passed since then. It took a long time for humanity. It took a long time, but humanity managed to recover, although not without help. At some point, 7 self-proclaimed archons appeared and offered help in rebuilding the world. Humanity accepted out of desperation. No one was in a position to reject their intervention, and in time, these beings became objects of worship, the 7 deities. But now that things were back to being relatively peaceful, some individuals had started questioning their benevolence. Still, the skeptics were dismissed as charlatans by society at large. If humanity's relationship with the 7 was to change, that day was still far away. Alicia didn't think she would live to see it. In any event, the abbey where the fire had taken place dedicated itself to the worship and study of one of the 7. Smith, lord of lycanthropy, gravity, and matter. No one was in a position to reject their intervention, and in time these beings became objects of worship, the 7 deities. But now that things were back to being relatively peaceful, some individuals had started questioning their benevolence. Still, the skeptics were dismissed as charlatans by society at large. If humanity's relationship with the 7 was to change, that day was still far away. Alicia didn't think she would live to see it. In the evening event, the abbey where the fire had taken place dedicated itself to the worship and study of one of the seven. Smith, Lord of lycanthropy, gravity and matter, as one said. It was located on the remote Monterey Island. Why would the police refuse to look into such an important incident? Was their client wrong? But how had she convinced Biden in that case? Have we hit land already? 3 days later, Elisa woke up to the murmur of people in the cell boxes being transported. When she looked out through the window, she was surprised to see they had already lowered anchor in a harbor. Not wasting any time, she went out to the main deck. However, what received her was a small trading post surrounded by forest. There was no abbey in the distance. The main deck seemed agitated. Excited seamen periodically boarded off the silt with toothy smiles and anticipation in their eyes. Lisa saw the man that had welcomed her talking to some other men near the gangplank. When they separated, she approached them. What is happening? Well, we were supposed to pick up some cargo and a couple of passengers, but things got complicated. It seems they got involved with a hunt before we arrived. The seamen on their way out overheard the conversation. One of them, a tall human with a few missing teeth and tattooed arms, had picked on Elisa's interest. You're going to watch the hunt now? I'll go with you. It's been a long time since I last saw hunters in action. So you have seen them work before, eh? Alright then, but stay close. The captain would skin us if we got past the hurt. Alright. Well, be careful. Elisa followed the seamen out into the port and then the woods. A crowd had formed a few hundred meters away from the coast. She recognized many of the seamen, but there were many unknown faces too. They were all looking the same way with expressions of fear and anticipation. Elisa couldn't see what was going on, so she pushed her way to the front. 2 meters away from the crowd stood a blessed man wearing long pants and a vest. A large pistol and a blade with an intricate handle awaited inside their seats, hanging from the hunter's belt. Farther back from him were 2 female hunters with the same uniform. Their blades were drawn, but what immediately drew Elisa's attention was a creature standing between the huntresses. If someone were to simply glance at it, they couldn't be blamed for confusing it with a large boulder. But upon closer inspection, one would notice that the boulder was moving ever so slowly, turning to face one of the huntresses, revealing what looked like a heavily distorted human face. Skin and flesh as hard as rock, empty eye sockets and a jaw that continuously hung open. After seeing its face, it was easy to start making out the shape of its extremities. Its arms were too small compared to the rest of its body, skinny even, but its legs were as thick as a tree trunk. It was a mismatched creature. Anyone who laid their eyes upon it would proclaim it as something from another world if they didn't know any better. The monster shot like a bullet towards the human huntress. She dodged out of the way at the very last second, and the creature fell face first to the ground. It rolled a couple of meters, knocking down several trees before finally stopping. This seemed like the perfect opportunity for a counterattack, but before the huntresses could get close, the creature had returned to its feet and lunged at her again. Elisa's shoulders tightened as the grotesque sound unexpectedly invaded her ears. The huntresses didn't just dodge. The human sword glinted as it swung down, sending a rocky leg and red droplets flying. The monster fell again, and the feline-blessed woman jumped to intercept it. She swung her blade once, and with just that, everything was over. As it rolled, the creature split in half, never to get up again. The crowd cheered. Some well-dressed men, who Elisa guessed were the ones responsible for running the harbor, approached the human woman. They discussed something briefly before handing her a hefty sack of money. She then signaled the other hunters. The feline one approached the creature's corpse and started to hack and slash at it, although sure not to damage any of its bones. Meanwhile, another person walked in front of the crowd. It was evident from his simple black vestments that he was a local monk affiliated with Smith's church. The man spread his arms open and spoke to the audience. Brothers and sisters, I am certain you're breathless after such a masterful display of the arts of fire. You must know now, before the hunters arrived and intervened, this terrible beast terrorized this harbor and the nearby towns. Within only 2 weeks, it took the lives of dozens of beloved members of our community. Let this be a reminder of the plague represented by the demons, whose insidious touch corrupts even the flesh and transforms it into something unrecognizable. Remember, you must reject their sweet words, the temptation to. The interesting part's over, I guess. Alicia fixed her hair before turning around and making her way back to the ship. They would take her off with them themselves, so she would rest in her cabin a bit longer. After a few hours of lying in bed, bored out of her mind, Alicia decided to return to the main deck for a small walk. The crew seemed to mostly ignore her, which she was fine with. However, she soon crossed paths with the feline hunters from earlier. She had cleaned herself up completely, irreconcilable with her blood-stained state for when she was stripping the rock monster. What do we have here? I'm surprised to see such a pretty girl in a place like this. Thanks. Eh, so what brings you here? I'm guessing you got business at the church, Smith. Right, are you aware of what happened there not too long ago? Part the abbot burned to death? Man, I was hoping it wouldn't be that. The huntress closed her eyes and laughed nervously at how quickly the conversation turned dark. Anyways, want to take a seat? Sure. Elisa followed the huntress to the staircase leading out to the quarterdeck. As she sat down, she visited with her tie and stared daggers into the blessed woman's back on the way. Elisa didn't want to seem rude, but she found herself somewhat perplexed at this woman suddenly talking to her. She never had been good with overly social people, nor particularly fond of them. That said, she didn't feel like rejecting her offer either. Come on, sit. I've been mostly lying in bed as of late. I'd rather stand. All right then. So, are you a relative of the deceased abbot? No, not at all. What business brings you to the church of Smith, then? I'm just curious. Well, have you ever heard of Body Spiner? The feline woman blinked and then realized her gaze as she thought the question over, but a few seconds after she shook her head. Can't say I have. He is a famous detective where I come from. I'm his assistant. We got hired to investigate the abbot's death. Oh? But don't you detectives investigate crimes? I thought what happened at the church was an accident. Body hasn't told me why, but I suppose he thinks it isn't. What about you? Ah, well, we were hired as bodyguards. How unusual. By someone from the church, I assume? Not really. A bunch of old men from the other churches were visiting when the fire happened. Not really. A bunch of old men from the other churches were visiting when the fire happened. They requested some extra protection or something. There must be important to have enough money to hire hunters as bodyguards. I think Hotaro mentioned they are abbots. Interesting, maybe they share the same concerns as the Cellarer. Or maybe they've gone senile. I do wonder if it was just a coincidence the fire happened while they were there, though. By the way, I don't think I introduced myself. Name's Layla. Nice to meet you. I'm Lisa. Say, is it troublesome for you to stay out here? I've heard the sun is harmful to people like you. Don't worry, that's not the case for me. Really? There are always exceptions to the rules, I guess. I suppose you could say that. I wasn't even born with albinism. It just manifested when I was a little girl. What? You're kidding, right? Haha. The doctor said it can happen. It might be generic in my case. It was an indisputable fact that Elisa's skin and hair were pale to the point they seemed translucent, and that her irises were red like blood from the lack of pigmentation. But this hadn't always been the case. People rarely believed her. Albinism was very rare these days, and most weren't educated on the subject. Whitey was one of the few who did, but that was because he had been there to witness her transformation. Eventually, she simply got used to her new appearance and carried on. Hey, is there anything we can do here until we reach land? I know that we'll be throwing a party tomorrow. There will be some dancing and games and drinks. We can look forward to that. Sounds like it could be fun, I guess. If you don't mind me asking, how are things back at the Church of Fire these days? Things are fine, or so I hear. Do you know anyone there? I became acquainted with a few hunters I tweeted back when I did labor for the Church of Erd. I haven't seen them in a long time, and I'm wondering what became of them. You live south of Nova America, right? Correct. Unfortunately, I hardly ever hear from people that live down south, so there isn't much I can tell you. Oh, I see. What do you say we go hang out with the others? We're gonna play some truco. I have the pass, so don't know how to play that very well. Layla got up and stretched her limbs. If you say so, well, I'll be seeing you later. Yes, see you later. The remaining 2 days went by rather dully. Layla insisted Elisa join them in the party the crew would throw the next day. But after getting some food and drink, she excused herself back to her cabin by saying she was tired and needed to rest. Although it wasn't a lie, Elisa wasn't interested in making acquaintances she soon wouldn't see again. Had Buddy been there, he could have convinced her to stay. Eventually, Elisa went to bed early. When she woke up the next morning, after idly lying on the bed for several minutes, she got up and looked through the window. The sky was blue and clear, as was the ocean, and an island was emerging from the horizon. Surrounding the harbor was a busy rural area. There weren't many trees around, and she could make out the stable barns, windmills, and small houses. However, there was a structure that stood out from all others. Further back up a hill, tall walls could be seen, with something like a tower rising from behind them. It was still too far away to make out any details, but Elisa figured that was the Church of Cement. It's not as big as the Church of Erd, but this is still impressive. I should get ready. I don't think it will be long before we moor. After changing into some clean clothes and gathering her belongings, Elisa walked out to the main deck. She crossed her arms and leaned on the wooden railing, staring off at the sea and sometimes glancing at the growing island. As they disembarked, Elisa spotted a familiar figure standing in the harbor. A tall, fat crocodile covered in green scales, wearing a coat and a white sweater, his hands tucked in his pockets. The blessed man's stern gaze fell on her, and he walked closer. There you are. How was the trip? Nothing special, although we did make a stop and I got to see the hunters in action. And the smell of the sea was as annoying as usual, I guess. I first heard they would be coming earlier this morning, and so did Maggie. The abbess asked them to come for protection, a bit of an extreme measure, and the fire was just an accident. No, that's not even their usual duty. Still, it seems everyone is trying to keep Maggie in the dark as much as possible, poor thing. Talking about her, I'm assuming she convinced you? She's been busy, so we haven't talked a lot, but she made some solid points in what little time we had. I also saw some interesting things myself. Anyways, she's waiting for us right now. Come. On the stretch that led to the road stood a human woman with black hair, wearing a black tunic and glasses. To either side of her stood guards wearing chainmail and helmets, carrying with them medium-sized swords. Ah, you must be Elisa. I'm pleased to meet you. My name is Maggie. I'm the cellarer at the Church of Smith. Oh, hello? Elisa nodded. As I expected her for a couple of seconds, Maggie turned her head to the approaching group of hunters. You must be the bodyguards Diego called. Please follow me, everyone. The abbey isn't too far away. Much to Elisa's dismay, that had turned out to be untrue. By the time they were near the gate, she was sweating and her breathing was audibly jaded. Bidey, despite his larger body, was unaffected. He gave the woman a slightly amused grin. This is why I keep telling you to exercise more often, Alicia. How are you going to catch criminals if you get tired from walking up a hill? Bidey's teasing annoyed her, but she tried to not talk too loudly. But I'm in better shape than you. I don't know where you get your stamina from. A deep and slow laugh rumbled out of the crocodile's throat. Elisa remained silent for a couple of seconds until she came up with her comeback. Besides, I bet they would have had carrots ready for us if you weren't such a huge bastard. Blame them for making us walk. It would kill the horses if they had to drag your fat ass up to the abbey. Ha ha ha. That's harsh. But anyway, we are about to arrive, so hang in there. Guards dressed the same as the ones accompanying the cellarer were walking over the walls. Upon seeing them approach, one of them shouted an order to open the gates. It felt more like the entrance to an old castle than an abbey. The gigantic double doors opened to reveal a long, neat path leading to an old-fashioned church. To her right, Elisa saw a very well-kept yard, as well as a pair of simpler buildings to her left. Both of them were similarly wide. One looked like a tall and long hall, while the other one was 3 stories high. It was probably the dormitory, considering the amount of windows. But it looks pretty intact to me. Maybe the abbot slept somewhere else. As they drew closer to the church, another building, its architecture similar to the 3-story one, started peeking from behind the yard. This one was only 2 stories high and had suffered fire damage. Most of the windows had broken and its gray walls were stained black. So that must be where the abbot died. Hello, Lacusti. Will you mind escorting Elisa here to a free cell? Yes, ma'am. Elisa bolted an unknown voice and looked at Maggie. In front of the cellarer stood someone in a black habit, but it was evident this person wasn't just any monk. Nowadays, anyone would recognize those sodding blue scales that fins on his head and his gills. After the 7 arrived at Earth and gained enough support for temples to be built or repurposed for their worship, they introduced humanity to what they dominated their right hand, the descendants. Being servants of the gods, they were powerful magical beings. Because of this and the story they shared with humanity, most people felt intimidated by their presence. Or at least commoners did. People with years living in temples usually didn't mind them. I can take her to my cell, Maggie. You don't mind sharing the cell with me, right, Alicia? Smell side, not really. Hi. It's okay if you want to share the cell. I need to take the hunters to Diego once I'm finished. I'll go there. We'll attend to our business. Of course. Please, allow me to guide you to your cell regardless. It's a simple courtesy to do as much for our guests. This being one of the 7 major churches meant that they needed to be equipped to house all the people who could come from different parts of the world for education or work. The monks' dormitory reflected this encounter with 3 floors with around 30 cells for each one. Most of them had pair of bunk beds, wardrobes, and desks inside. It's not too different from the dormitory at the Church of Erd, a bit smaller if anything, although it seems pretty empty. The monks must be out there doing labor. Here's your cell. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. The monks will help you or direct you to the right person as well. Alright, thank you. Nakushi bowed and then walked off, disappearing as he went down the stairs. Alicia and Biden entered the cell. The hybrid woman was surprised at how spacious it was. Maggie probably had handpicked it to accommodate her mental size. The crocodile immediately laid belly down on his bed while his partner just dropped her backpack on hers and then looked at him. I forgot to ask, if the abbots from the other major churches are visiting, that means your uncle is here, yes? He's here, yep. Have you talked to him? Nope. He's been annoying me. You're right, Elisa. Blood relatives can be so cold, although I don't care. We never talked much back when I was still in the family, haha. Does he even know it's you? I believe so. Perhaps Maggie isn't aware, but I'm reasonably sure my family still keeps tabs on me. Well, okay. What did I miss then? Did you find something out? Buddy grunted as he shifted to lay on his side, his thick tail moving every once in a while as he pondered where to start. I have been spending most of my time at the library since I arrived here 5 days ago. I did try to interview the former Abbott's inner circle, but they believe the police for now, so that didn't bear any fruit. What I did manage to do was get Maggie to let me into the morgue so I could take a look at the corpse. Oh, they got a morgue here? Yes, this temple isn't in the middle of the city, Elisa. Sometimes an old man suddenly dies from a heart attack and his family wants to bury him somewhere in particular. So they are stuck with the corpse here until a boat comes to take it away. You get the idea. So the corpse is charred beyond recognition. You would think it could be anyone if it wasn't because it was discovered in his cell and is the only person missing. Really? Did the fire last very long? You see, the staff's dormitory faces towards the cloister. It seems it was bad enough so embers managed to spread there and the resulting fire almost engulfed the church. If it wasn't because there are some boys from the church of Knock here, the entire place might have gone up in flames. It's a miracle no one else died for the sound of it. Okay, anything else? The crocodile looked up and scratched the side of his snout. Let me think. Oh, about the Knock boys. It was one of them that discovered the corpse. I found out just yesterday, so we haven't talked yet. I see. At least you managed to get us a lead. Not bad. You still haven't heard all of it. Let's relax and wait for Maggie for now, though. I would like to hit the saddles, to be honest. Fortunately, it wasn't much longer before they heard a knock on the door. Body shouted to come in, and Maggie stepped inside. The crocodile got up from his bed to receive her. Compared to just a few minutes ago, she seemed unwell. Her expression wasn't too different from before, but there was traces of fatigue showing in her eyes. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. It's no big deal. I'm guessing neither the staff nor the other abbots are cutting you any slack. Indeed, and they seemed in a hurry to appoint a new abbot. I wonder if they are displeased that you called me here. Were that the case, will you suspect them, Body? It's too soon to say. Not wanting me here isn't all that suspicious. A detective on the scene can make people think a crime took place, regardless of the facts. They might believe a crime didn't take place, so for them, my presence here just makes them and the church look bad. I suppose. So what did you wish to ask me? I was thinking we haven't talked as much as I would like, and the others in the former Abbott circle are proving hard to approach. So how about you give me the full version of what happened before the crime, from your perspective? That way, we can also bring my assistant here up to speed. Please don't leave anything out, no matter how irrelevant it may seem to you. The sailor nodded, a bit of energy returning to her gaze. Before the crime, I assume both of you are aware that every August, the abbots of all major churches gather to have a conference. We were busy making sure everything was ready for when the other abbots arrived. That involves a thorough cleaning, requesting unusual ingredients, disciplining some of the unruly monks so they won't make a blunder. Back then, William seemed to be on edge. His hair was messier than usual. At times, he would stare off into the distance and get startled when you spoke to him. Sometimes he would look so pale. I asked him if something was wrong, but he insisted he was just stressed out. I didn't have any reason to think otherwise back then, so I believed him. Maggie shook her head, biting her lips and looking down. Soon she went silent. Elisa decided to interject. After the fire, the rest of the staff decided to appoint me to fill his role until the other abbot settled for a permanent replacement. His quarters were destroyed, but his study in the church building remained intact. The sailor was expressing tightened again, but this time not out of sadness. As I was going over his papers, I found something quite disconcerting. Do you still have it on you, Bidey? Of course. Bidey reached for one of his coat's pockets and produced two envelopes. Both of them were all black with a strange symbol engraved in yellow in the middle. I found those in his study. I thought they looked strange. I don't recognize the design, but the contents were even stranger. The crocodile handed Elisa the envelopes. After checking both their front and back, she opened one. The letter inside was very brief, and it reads as follows. The sun's light falls upon all of us equally. She raised an eyebrow and proceeded to read the second letter. Soar too high, you will burn. Now you understand. As soon as I read this, I was certain he had been threatened. Do we know when he might have received this? Since Mataraki is an isolated island, our only means of communication with the outside world is through the ships that come and go. There is a farm wolf, the ship that took you here, which is employed directly by us to transport goods and guests. It makes us stop here every 2 weeks. The abbots came in their own vessel, but that was an exception. However, our mail gets delivered by a company that sends a boat here every Saturday. The latest we could have received a letter before dying was the 24th of last month. Right. And he died the morning of July 25th, yes? Correct. And have you shown this to the police? Maggie's head and shoulders dropped. I informed them about the letters, and they said it was most likely a joke. They did ask me to give them to them, but I told them the letters were so unpleasant I had already thrown them away. Called me paranoid, but I was afraid they had ulterior motives. I guess they did dismiss the entire thing as an accident pretty fast, but still. Buddy let out a guttural laugh. But it was the right choice in the end. How so? When I was checking the corpse, I noticed it had an open wound on the back of the head. A According to the autopsy, it was a product of falling debris. They believe he received it shortly before succumbing to the fire, but judging from the angle and the force would definitely hit him must have needed to penetrate his skull. I'm skeptical. It was deep enough that I'm convinced the impact killed him before the fire could. Is that right? I did hear about the injury, but I could believe it was debris if he had gotten a couple of blunt injuries, but this isn't the case here. We can't trust the police to properly investigate this case, and in the worst case scenario, they might try to obstruct us. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it might be possible someone doesn't want this case to be investigated. But why would anyone want that? As I said, I'd rather not draw conclusions just yet. So is there anything else you can tell me, Maggie? If something comes to mind, I'll let you know. But for now, that's everything. Thank you. You have been more help than anyone else around here so far ahead. Maggie, Bidey said one of the monks of the church had not discovered the corpse. We'd like to speak with him. Is he here now? Maggie sighed, this time visibly exasperated. It's the first time I hear of this. It can only be Frank or Aloys. Both of them should be working at the scriptorium right now. What do you say we head there now, Elisa? I'd rather go take a bath first. The cells are north of this dormitory. They're hard to miss. If that's everything, I'll sew myself out now. Yes, thank you again. Elisa, wash your back out there. I know. Deciding it would be better to wait for Elisa to return to show her the way to the scriptorium, Bidey went back to lying in bed after the two women had exited the cell. Elisa, can I ask you something personal? Depends, what is it? What is your relationship with Bidey? I asked out of curiosity. Forgive me if I'm being just mental, but it isn't often I see girls of your age working in law enforcement. I assume Bidey is one who introduced you to this job, so I'm wondering how you two met each other before that. Also, I might have overheard you talking on the way here. Your conversation didn't strike me as very professional. I see, I guess technically speaking, he's my adopted father. Well, I see. Elisa shrugged and the two of them walked down the stairs. The distant rumble of the machines working echoed through the room as the smell of iron invaded my nose, creating an uncomfortable tingle inside of it. My limbs and the back of my skull felt uncomfortable, almost in pain, as if I was lying on something very hard, but I didn't care about any of that. All that mattered was the darkness surrounding me. This way, everything was okay. As long as I kept sleeping without a care in the world, everything would be fine. Yes, everything was fine. If I could dream, I wouldn't need anything else ever again. After reassuring myself of this, my entire body relaxed and my consciousness peacefully sank back into the land of dreams. It enveloped me, filling my lungs with each breath I took, eroding my sense of self away. And then the incessant hammering started drawing closer ever so slowly. With every beat of my heart, it grew louder and louder, as if I was waiting on a conveyor belt, getting closer to the machine that would crush me. Even so, I shut my eyes even harder and covered my ears, until I felt a pressure on my chest that jolted me awake. Breathing in fast intervals, I looked at my surroundings. At first I struggled to make out any kind of shape, but after calming down, I realized I was in a dark room. I am sitting on a bed. I can't help but let my mouth hang open, because it immediately hits me that I don't know where I am. Afraid and confused, I'm about to hug my legs when I notice I'm clutching something. It's some sort of oval object. There is a pattern engraved on the surface. I also take notice of a shallow hole in the center of it. Although it's not deep at all, the The interior is completely black. Is this a screen perhaps? Curious I try to tap the black surface. My suspicions quickly turn out to be right. However, the screen lights up red and orange displays the word error. Is this broken? Damn it. But I don't care about getting whatever this is working. Now that it's on, I can use it as a flashlight and get off the bed and look around. The more I inspect the room, however, the more the pit in my stomach grows. While it is vaguely familiar, I can't clearly remember ever being here. I also tried to get the door open, but it seems to be locked. I even give it a few kicks, but it refuses to budge. Perhaps there is a key somewhere around here. Maybe having a bit more light would help. After looking around some more, I almost gasp from excitement when I find a window hidden behind a pair of curtains. The blinds are lowered, but it doesn't take me long to find the cord to open them. I'm not sure of what I'll see behind them, but it should at least stimulate my memory or give me some clue on how I ended up here. Even better, where am I? Letting out a relieved sigh, I pull from the string. Only to find a solid rusty metal wall on the other side of the blinds. All the blood in my body turns cold, and I instinctively step away from the window. And it is only then that, for the first time, I get a good look at my hand under the red light. It looks off in the dark. I thought it was simply covered in black fur, but no, it's my skin. But it looks all raw, it's dry, torn. Scared and fascinated in equal measure, I put the strings of the scene down on the windowsill and start picking at my deformed arm. It's hard, and whenever I scratch it, a small bit fall off. I keep peeling little black fragments as I start wheezing. My heart feels like it's trying to escape through my throat. What the hell's going on? This is all wrong. I shouldn't look like this. I shouldn't be here. It was only at that moment that the worst realization hits me. My arms are all messed up, and there is something very wrong with this room, obviously. But I can't recall where I was before I woke up here. And more importantly, I can't recall what I'm supposed to look like. My gut tells me this isn't normal, but I don't know why. It doesn't end there. That realization sets off a stream of endless questions. Where do I live? How long have I been here? What's my name? Who am I? And just as I ask myself this, I start feeling a sound like the echo of the scenes working somewhere in the distance. I always may have to see the screen on the small device light up again, this time green before return to black. It is self-displaying, not fake as a message. Trying to keep my breathing under control, I take a step forward to grab it. As Elisa followed biting silently into the church building, she couldn't help but let her eyes wander everywhere. She wasn't the kind of person to let herself get distracted by the beauty of things, but this was an exception. It was said that cement put great importance on aesthetics, and this place showed that. Separating the lobby and the nave were 4 sets of double doors, and on top of each one of these was an intricate tympanum. Sculptures depicted a 7. On top of the leftmost door stood Ked, imposing with her large, spiky frame, yet offering her hands to all visitors from faraway lands. Next to her was Na and Nok, with feathers dancing around the former and ferocious rays concealing most of the latter's form. To the right sat Tempest men on 2 thrones, looking over the worshipping peasants under them. And over the rightmost door were Erd and Fire, commanding their respective armies of medics and hunters. After a cursory look, they advanced into the nave. As Elisa stepped inside, she began feeling small. Despite the elegant black and gold walls and the intriguing elegance of the ancient runes carved into these, the hybrid woman couldn't shake the feeling something was up. A stained glass window at the opposite end of the building loomed over the investigators, much taller than it looked from the outside. Hey, buddy? Yes. Do you think they used magic on this place? I get the feeling it didn't look this big from the outside. I thought the same when I first came here. Over here. The scriptorium isn't too far. The crocodile guided Elisa to a door to the side of the nave into a hallway. They passed by two spiral staircases in the intersection of which a set of doors at the end of the corridor. Sounds of machinery and the voices of the monks came from the other side. A side creak welcomed them inside. At this time of the day, the scriptorium was bursting with activity. The soft paper, pencils, chairs, and even sewing machines filled the room. Most of the black-robed monks sat in front of their desks, working or conversing with another, while the remaining ones made trips between this room and the library upstairs to retrieve books or parchment. It is a good time to bring that up, despite Sarah's name and primary function with its medieval counterpart, copying text was the scriptorium's sole function in this era. Unless men It's a good time to bring up that, despite Sarah's name and primary function with its medieval counterpart, copying text wasn't the scriptorium's sole function in this era. Whilst men understood the importance of reproducing and preserving text, he also had acquired a taste for visual arts and fashion. Perhaps it had been self-indulgent on his part, but he had decided to repurpose the scriptorium to allow the monks to explore these arts too. But despite all this activity, it was hard for the duo to spot their target. In front of her desk, around the middle of the room, a black furred wolf wearing a blue habit and a mask sat by his lonesome. He was almost as big as Barty, so it wasn't too difficult to spot him. Elisa raised an eyebrow. That's a werewolf. I thought this guy was supposed to be a knock monk. Lycanthropy is one of Smith's blessings, so. And I didn't know the Smith's church had also taken on making clothes. So much for a place for writing. Indeed, that's Alois, and my memory doesn't fail me. He seems like quite the interesting fellow already. Let's go have a chat with him. Lisa squinted at Barty. An emperor's intent was hiding behind Barty's words. The playful spark in his eyes made this evident. I think it will be better if I speak with him alone for now. Oh, why? Because I don't want you flirting with a witness. Let me handle this, you old degenerate. The crocodile tried to frown at her, but he was barely able to contain the cackle that came over him. The crocodile tried to frown at her, but he was barely able to contain the cackle that came over him. Come on, Lisa. You know I never do that before the case is closed. Although you might be rusty after your trip. Try the charm on him. See if you still got it. I'll be nearby, listening. Fine. Elisa let out a sigh and approached the werewolf. His ears twitched and he turned toward Elisa before she said anything. He must have been expecting someone else because he opened his mouth, but his tongue stopped moving before a word came out. He was quick to clear his throat and greet Elisa. Greetings. I don't think I have seen your face before. Perhaps you're a guest. Is there any way I could be of service? Yes, actually. Are you a lawyer by any chance? That question gave the werewolf a small pause, although there was no visible change in his demeanor nor his face. Yes, my name is Eloise. Maggie hired me to look into what happened a few nights ago, so I wanted to ask you a few questions. Are you with the crocodile detective? Eloise slightly tilted his head as he said this. At least I figured he was looking behind her at Bitey. Yes, I see. I can spare you a couple of minutes. The werewolf took off the gloves he was using to work and stood on his seat so he could face Alicia. Well, that was easy. Let's start slow. I want to have a glimpse at his personality and what he usually does at the airport before getting to the crime. This isn't necessarily related to the crime, but you are a Nog monk, right? What are you doing in the church of men? I take it you are not very familiar with Med or Nog church. I'm not. Could you explain? Due to their functions, both churches work closely together. In the past, knowledge was spread in abundance through what was called the web, as well as massive produced media. Nowadays, that technology isn't available anymore, as men's church has taken over the production and distribution of books. Therefore, it's only natural we cooperate with them when it comes to releasing knowledge into the world. I see, and because of their close relationship, it's not that uncommon for monks from one church to be transferred to the other. Correct. Where this church has that Knox doesn't is the possibility to study art or fashion. That must be of interest for some Knock monks, I suppose. Hmm. And how do they pick who gets transferred? Well, as long as you are dutiful, if you have interest in being transferred, it can be arranged. Is that so? Alicia blinked and took a moment to observe the werewolf's furry ears and snout. Is werewolf training required to get transferred here, or did you do it because you wanted to? The werewolf opened his mouth as if to answer, but there were 2 seconds of hesitation before any words came out. Indeed. Indeed what? I chose to train to become a werewolf. I always had an interest in them, so Elisa barely contained a smirk of satisfaction from seeing the werewolf stumble over his words. Up until now, there had been a very monotonous tone to Aloysius' voice, but now there was something else that answered want. However, his body still showed no reaction. He just really likes the werewolf aesthetic. I think he's considering drilling deeper into that topper, but he isn't sure. I hope that isn't the only reason he came to this abbey. Well, if he obtained the blessing, that must mean he's a devoted monk. No reason to bring his character into question yet, but other than this, he has barely emoted. If it wasn't because of this reaction, I guess he's made out of stone. Perhaps if I could see his eyes, I'd have an easier time reading him, but I suppose so far I have no reason to doubt what he says. I should look out for any behavioral change when bringing up the fire. Understand, let's get to the point now. I heard you were the one that discovered the corpse. Care to tell me what happened that night from your perspective? Oh, let me think. That night my teacher told me to meet him late at night to have a training session. Werewolf training? Yes. After dinner, I exited the refectory and went straight to the library where my teacher waited for me. As a result, I went to bed very late. Do you happen to remember the time? It was around midnight when I went back. I believe the moons and the stars were visible. I see. Continue then. To be honest, even after the fire started, I didn't wake up until my partner and a few other monks pushed me out of bed. This partner you are talking about is Frank, correct? Yes, he came from the Church of Knock too. In any event, by the time we were out there, the fire had spread to the cloister. The monks were trying their best to keep the situation under control, but there's only so much you can do about a fire that big while being so far away from the coast. It took Frank and I's water magic to put the fire out. Okay, what happened next? My teacher told me to accompany him inside the dormitory to make sure all the fire had been put out and check if there were any victims. Inside, both of us detected a strange smell. We followed it, and it led us to the abbot's cell. That's where we found him. He was in a very sorry state, to say the least. Alois didn't show himself moved by the abbot's passing away, not even while recalling his memory. Elisa had been expecting him to react differently to Maggie, who had known William for a longer time when questioned about this, but she didn't catch the slightest shift in his body language. But she had managed to catch him off guard earlier. Was he trying to hide something, or did this not awaken anything in him? It could also be that Bidey was right and she had gotten rusty. I imagine after that you reported your findings to the remaining staff and they called the police. Yes, I admit I became paralyzed. My teacher had to practically drag me out of the building. Did you? So you were up until late that night. Did you see anything unusual before going to bed before the fire? Can't say I did. Had I been less tired, I would have been more attentive to my surroundings, but at the time, I wanted to head straight to bed. However, you could ask my teacher Remigio if he saw anything. He's much stronger than I am. He usually takes strolls at night. Do you know where we may find him? At this time, he's usually hanging out in the guards of the walls. I will check there. And how do we get in there? You saw that big yard by the church? Yes. Beyond it is the guards' barracks, and between them and the entrance is a door that leads inside the walls. There are some ladders and other entrances, but those are reserved for the guards. Reasonable. Before a loud noise interrupted Elisa. Most of the racket in the scriptorium stopped as the monks looked in their general direction and Eloy stood up. But they also got closer to investigate. Elisa turned around. Behind her was a masked monk with a blue habit, much like Aloys's, kneeling as he collected books and drawing tools that fell from the box he had been carrying. Aloys kneeled at his side, talking with a somewhat softer tone as he helped him out. What are you doing, Frank? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I twirled. Oh, I hope nothing's broken. Elisa watched him and then stepped closer, crouching down to help the human boy. Oh, please, don't worry. We can pick this up on our own. It's no problem. I was hoping to speak to you as well, after all. Huh? She's with the detective, Frank. They are asking questions about what happened to the abbot. Oh. Let's finish picking this up first. May I go back to work now? Yes, thank you for your cooperation. You're welcome. And Frank, take a seat somewhere if you're feeling unwell. As I said, I'm fine. Aloys glanced at him from head to toe before going back to his desk, taking with him the box Frank had brought. The monk sighed and then looked at Elisa, clearly still a bit shaken up. Sorry for the bad first impression. That doesn't happen often, I promise. It's fine, so you're Frank, the other monk that's currently staying here, correct? That's right. And what enticed you to transfer to this abbey, Frank? I just wanted to keep Aloy's company. He's nice, but not exactly great at making friends. Oh, so you two were friends back at Knott's Temple? Yep, cellmates for life. I see. What do you think of him? Of Aloys? He's pretty cool. Kinda hard to read, but a good guy nonetheless. He's also a total dork. Did he already tell you the whole reason he undertook werewolf training was that he loves wolves so much? Something like that. Elisa looked sideways at Aloys' desk. His ears were raised, and the inside was getting a bit red. This guy seems like the complete opposite to Aloys. He burns with energy and emotion. And he has a very loose tongue, too, apparently. That might prove useful. We were on. Frank, is there anything you can tell me about the fire the other night? The sudden change in topic gave the young monk a pause. He lowered his head and brought his hand to his chin. Let me think. That night went straight to our cell once we finished dinner. I presume by we, you mean Aloys. Do you know where he went? That evening, so he returned a couple hours later. Okay, go on. Well, I read a book on my desk until I got tired and then went to bed, I think around 10 p.m. I don't know when Aloys came back, but he was there, snoring like a truck when I got woken up by all the commotion caused by the fire. And it wasn't long after that some monks broke into the cell looking for us. And after we got the fire under control, Remigio took Aloys and they checked the burnt dormitory. Frank scratched his neck and looked to the side. Is he imagining what Aloys must have seen? Well, I couldn't sleep after that. When Aloys came back, he told me what had happened. May the abbot rest in peace. Let's see. Is there anything else you'd like to mention? Not really. Truth is, I spent most of the night in the cell, so I didn't see anything. I'm sorry. Don't be. This will still be helpful. Maybe. What about the abbot? Do you notice anything being off with him before the fire? No, we the monks didn't get to interact with him very often. Let's see. That would be all then. May I give you a piece of advice? What is it? Frank stepped a bit closer and lowered his voice. Aloys and I don't have any problem cooperating, but be careful when talking to the Summit monks. The police already disregarded the possibility of murder. Some of them will take offense if questioned about this. I figured it would be like that, but thanks for the warning. Oh, you're welcome. Until we meet again, Frank. The young monk nodded. Elisa turned around and returned the body. I believe we are done here for now. Yes, we should look for that Remigio next. It seems if someone saw anything strange that night, it had to be him. Although let's not get our hopes up just yet. Before that, buddy, do you mind if we make a stop by the kitchen? What for? Woke up too late and missed the breakfast at the sip. I'm starving. We can make a stop, but I can't promise yourself it's going to let us take anything. He's very well, you will see. So that was our first look at chapter 1. So I got to figure out the reason we're here. It's a totally new cast of characters, Alicia and Bitey, and they're a detective duo, and they travel to this island to investigate the death of the abbot, who is the leader of one of the churches that people worship. Each church does a separate function, and each church represents, each church worship a different god. So anyway, the abbot is like the head of the church, and he got murdered. So Elisa and Bitey are trying to investigate who murdered him, and we got to meet the settler, and the other abbots are also on the island. The other church leaders, the leaders from the other churches, they're here for a big conference, but with the abbot's death, I forgot the name of the church that abbot was a part of. I think it was Smid, I think. Anyway, but with him being killed, that has kind of ruined those plans with this conference. So, some reason the police chose not to investigate this. They didn't really want any part with it for some reason. I guess the abbots had control over the police here, so I guess the police had to do what the abbots wanted them to do. So we got to meet two knock monks who were there when the fire happened, but apparently both of them was sleeping where it happened, so they didn't really get to see what happened and who possibly did it. Well, anyway, they talked with Aloys, who is the werewolf, and by the appearance of him, in the dialogue itself, he's about as big as Biden himself, and I think Aloys is kind of like a furry in the sense that he likes the werewolf look. He likes to be a furry. I mean, he likes to be like a furry animal, like like I guess it's like this Era's version of a furry, I guess. So he likes the werewolf aesthetic, so he wants to be one himself. And yeah, so he gets to be one, and so he was originally a human, but after werewolf training, he became one himself. And we also got to meet the other monk, whose name is Frank, and he told his part as well. So in the next video, we're gonna go to the kitchen because Alicia wants something to eat, and maybe they'll get some information from the people working in the kitchen. So thank you all very much for watching. Bye.